Welcome to the JBC.
Just brothers chopping.
I am Renaissance, the storyteller. Glad to be with you.
And this is Twan hanging in
Are
there.
you ready, man? I was thinking about how these podcasts have been going and just how we just rocking and really hoping to gain speed and momentum and not really per se concerned with views, but caring about the truth. And I think that's the really thing. And I was thinking about this is personal application skill.
Yeah.
Yes. And we just give small steps that are realistic steps that can help us as a people continue to grow and get better in these last days. Because, man, it's like, it's crazy out there. Have you been kind of, I don't watch the news per se, but I get a little bit of information. Have you been watching the craziness going on?
Yeah, I like to keep a temperature check on what's going on in the world. So, I'll tap into the different news stations just to kind of hear what's going on, keeping ideas so I can be somewhat connected to what's going on. But yeah, it's crazy. It's been crazy for a while, and it seems like that's become the new norm now. It's
And
crazy.
I'm glad you said it because when we say it's the new norm, I can never think of in the 80s or the 90s when we were growing up doing our little thing, trying to develop and mature. I never thought that we'd get, I know it's gonna get crazy, but never to this degree. It's like, I was working at schools getting back into the system this week and just looking at around the country how they have in these fake bomb threats or fake shootings.
Yeah.
In
Really.
Florida, the cop told the people, I'm going to lock your son or daughter up and I'm going to lock you up. They didn't take the man for real. And lo and behold, little young kid caused a little shooting threat, had a little air pistols and things of that nature, and knives and guns, and was on social media posting it. And then, lo and behold, he was doing a perk walk.
Wow. I mean, I kind of like the idea of parents getting involved because like with the other kid where the father got involved, he kind of had some skin in the game as well, particularly because he knew that his kid had problems and he went and bought that gun. I think parents should be held to a higher level of responsibility, because with that, if that happens, that kind of forces you to get involved and engage with your children's lives to see what's going on, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's so odd because and I know we come from a two-parent home, which people say that's so foundational. However, there still was time for us to get in a little devil man as dad would say, you
Oh, yeah.
know. But because we had a foundation that was established, we knew that you can't go so far outside these borders. But now, even in South Carolina, where I'm living, it was recently they had 16 bomb threats or 16 shooting threats within this local area
Wow.
recently. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, so who's watching the children? Or basically, oh yeah, I got to get and you got students who have I-15s, I-16s. They got the new
Yeah.
phones.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they think that they can't be caught because they're young. They don't understand the nuances of cybersecurity and how people can trace you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty intense. I mean, like the stuff they show on TV, that's kind of the high tech stuff. It's only a small percentage of what's really happening behind the scenes. It's just to give you insight that, we can tap into certain things. We just gonna give you a little taste. I mean, even, working in some places like corporate America, you type emails up and you delete it. That email is not gone, no matter how much. Not only that, they keep a record of literally every keystroke that you make.
Yes.
No
And
lie.
I was so fun when I went back to work this weekend. I thought I was going to have to do everything online with the computer so they could sit back and watch what I'm doing day by day as I instruct the students to see whether or not I'm actually doing my job. But I'm going to be a person who's going to do it anyway. But I was glad when they said, oh, because you're in person, you can go ahead and just use the computer for testing assessment. But when it gets down to the nuts and bolts of the lesson, use a whiteboard or use the classroom material, pen and paper. And I'm like, good,
Right.
because I have nothing to hide, but I'm just watching how just society and how corporate America said, we got to keep an eye on these people. And what I'll share with people who might just kind of get a chance to get a gander at this family, whether you're 98 or 8, there's something called a digital footprint. And
Mm-hmm.
a digital footprint is just like when you talked about the walking with the father and the sand footprint poem, you
Yeah,
remember?
footprints. Yes.
Every step, keystroke, search thing you do goes to a server and is part of your digital footprint, which is why, I not to get to politics, but like the guy in North Carolina running for governor who's getting mad because they're saying, well, why is they putting this up? And I was like, the digital footprint that you had 10 years ago that you forgot about has now resurfaced and it's really juxtaposed with who you say you are and what your policies will do. I mean, when you said, well, I was, you can go back to slavery time. I'm like, well, hell, I guess you would have been a house Negro.
Yeah, Norman, yeah, holding the gun on everybody. It's interesting. He tried, of course, they're going to say, oh, it's a lie and everything. But here's the thing, you know, your top aides, they retired. They basically resigned that following Monday. Your top aides are there to protect you until they can no longer protect you.
And then they get out the way.
Yeah, which means that, they're there to fight off any lies and everything with truth. Now, if they resign, that's a big, big.
Yeah, because you, especially
Yeah.
when you come up and they have the name and it's like, and so his ploy to get elected for a position where he would get in there and maybe do some policies and things that would not benefit the people of color who are being marginally discriminated against, it now reflects badly upon him. So even yesterday, I think he was in North Carolina doing some campaigning and he got burned, second degree burn and some type of thing. And I was like, wow, I said, people don't realize karma comes back sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and here's where I'm leading with this because as I prepared for the show, I was watching a video on social media, and it was a older Black woman, and she was talking about this upcoming election and her thoughts. And when she began to speak, she was speaking in objection to Vice President Harris, which I have no dog in the fight. So please understand that, family, politically, I have no dog in this fight, but it's just watching the information. And she was speaking so fearful, like, well, if people just don't know if this happens, the jail population is going to go up. And I was like, man, do you not understand that for 40 years the jail population went up? Now prison is a private industry. It's
Yes.
about money making. So
Yes.
she is not the proponent. The system itself is doing this. Whether you get Trump or whether you get Harris, it's going to continue to feed off of itself. That's how they make their profit.
Exactly.
And my question then goes right to the show. Do you think she's speaking out of faith or fear?
That's a clear one for me. I'm gonna say she's operating out of fear.
And that's what got me into this topic this day because we've been talking about the hope and fear. We talked about some other things and everything. I think you said it maybe 2 or 3 times in our prior podcast. You said faith.
Mm-hmm.
What is faith by your definition in your words?
I would say it's the belief in um what you feel is true to you and in nature. That's what I would say.
Hmm.
The belief in that, and unapologetically without fear. Even if you haven't seen it, it's just something that you believe in at your core.
Got you. And the thing at your core.
Yes,
So that means it has to be kind of quote unquote built within to you by your experiences, by your studies or lack thereof.
true. Very
Oh,
true.
and here's the last one that really just hit me. And it's like a lot of people have faith in what they can see.
Uh, yeah. What's
That's
that?
the man who, yeah, that's the man who makes $150,000 a year. Don't
Yeah,
need a lot of faith.
right. What's
That's the woman who married a millionaire, a billionaire, and she has this equity into him, and she's like, she didn't sign a prenup. She doesn't have to worry about herself for the rest of her life. She doesn't need faith.
mm-hmm.
Or the brother out there who's selling that dope on the block who knows if I sell this many products every week, I'll generate this amount. You don't need faith.
Right.
And see, that's the thing I think about. And I was like, a lot of us have gotten so comfortable,
Mm-hmm. Complacent.
comfortable. And that's where today's thing is. I want to hopefully make you uncomfortable so we can begin to solidify our foundations. And um, what's a character you can think of that just really, even in real life, that who shows that they have this immense faith, this belief you mentioned,
A character in real life.
or in the Bible, however you want to use it.
Wow. Um, I would say Job.
Mm,
Job, yeah, in the Bible. He had a very strong faith. I mean, to the point where he lost literally everything and then got sick and then was even instructed by his wife to curse his God. He said, probably not. We're not
yeah.
doing that.
And
I'm
this is for
out of
a
my
person who he had been with, had children with, who he had built up his reputation with. And on top of that, about Joe, he had friends who were like, "Hey, Joe, why don't you curse God too?" And it was like, hold up. And I went back recently and I read the last book of Job just to
mm,
kind of get the culmination of what he had gone through, the people who told him to stop believing,
hmm
and what happened because he was like, I can't try what you said is possible
uh-huh.
because in faith, all things are possible. And
Exactly.
therefore, he was restored. I mean, I'll sit back and I'm like, wow, it's from his children to his property to whatever he lost. But the thing is, it's not the end story of Job, it's that story you talked about, where
Mhm.
you wake up one day and all your sheep are gone and all your flock are gone. And then there's a storm that kills all your children. And then you lose all these. I mean, how do you think he dealt with the loss when in the middle of the loss?
Oh wow. I'm gonna say that I mean, as a human, I'm sure he was devastated. He was had to be absolutely devastated. He was human. You know, how he dealt with it, I'm gonna say he hunkered down and he stayed focused. He
Hmm.
stayed focused on the goal, which was his faith in God, knowing that God will restore, God will hold his word. You know, he made a promise, that he will not forsake. And he knew that. Even despite what he was going through on this physical realm, he knew that there was something deeper that had him, and that was his faith in God.
And that's what leads me to the first verse that I remembered as a young man, and it was one that always stuck with me. And I guess I'd see why, because it's been a staple. It's been the core of everything that I've been able to achieve. And when I lost something, I was able to achieve something again. And I lost and I was able to achieve it again. And so we got to understand there's going to be seasons of loss, but
Hmm.
you can't let that be apprehend you with fear. Like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know. And it says now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things, keyword, not seen. See,
Hmm.
it's that not seen part that I think a lot of us deal with, or we might have heard stories of like, oh, well, when they lost their home, they weren't able to do this. They were out on the streets and they just heard all the horror stories of people do whatever it is to keep their home. And sometimes they end up going dead broke.
Yeah.
Why do you think people allow or forget their stories of faith in the middle of their loss?
Hmm. You kind of nailed it. I feel like a lot of it is what we're seeing with our eyes, you know, can be a big distraction. You know that saying, they say what believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, because half what you see is a lie. All of what you hear is hearsay about other people's experience. And lots of times if you listen to other people's experience and you're seeing what other people are going through, kind of like social media, that's one of the major issues right now with the depression thing that's going on. People are seeing what people are posting, these happy lives and everything. And I'm sure people have happy lives, but lots of times you can tend to compare yourself with what you see, and what you see is not necessarily always true, and it can lead you to depression.
And a lot of people who do post, and I'm not saying all of them, they post the good stuff.
Of course.
They're not going to post when I go through this or when I go through that. Even when I was living in my little nomadic, homeless, quote unquote, time, I would still do podcasts. It was a different one, but I still kept doing them. I
Hmm.
didn't say, well, I'm gonna stop because I'm out here in this motel, rat infested, roach infested with these drug dealers and these pimps and hoes. I'm not gonna do it right here because I don't want people to see me. I didn't care. It didn't matter. And I'll share a story. There was so many times. This is a short one, and it was a bill I had to pay. All right, bro. And I was $20 short on the bill, and I didn't really want to go bother anyone for any money or anything. And
Hmm.
so I'm going to get gas, and I walk in the gas station, pay for it, and then I'm walking back to the vehicle to put the gas in the vehicle. And when I walked back to the gas, the car that was there before me when I was pumping my gas had left. And
Hmm.
I looked down. Something said, look down. And I looked down. Guess what I found?
$20.
A $20 bill.
That's interesting. That's interesting. But
Literal
yeah,
walking by faith, not by sight.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know? And what I think is, and I was writing this today, and I said, you know, you go to the gym and you talk about building up your muscles, and you talk about how now you ride the bike
Mhm.
20 minutes or elliptical or the treadmill, but
Yeah,
you're building up a heart muscle, right?
correct.
No one sees a heart muscle,
No,
but it affects what?
everything.
And what can you tell me what's the benefit of you now with you doing that cardio? How does it benefit you?
I mean, all around in terms of like health, um, levels of stress. I mean, I actually had a doctor's follow-up appointment a week ago. And because last year around this time, my, blood pressure and things were a bit high, cholesterol levels were a bit high. And, I stuck with I incorporated the cardio. That's really the only thing I did differently, because I worked out the same, same routine for the most part. But I incorporated the cardio, because I'm working with the weights, it's just working the outside. But I never forget, met this guy in the gym, and he did like 5 minutes of cardio, and I was telling him I want to get in the cardio, and he was like, "Yeah, you have to work your body from the inside out." And I never forgot that. So I started working my cardio. So now it's from the inside out. So long story short, went back to my follow-up appointment, cholesterol levels dropped, in a good way, so it was a downward trajectory. So again, working at that heart muscle was able to actually to give life, actually able to give life to my internal organs and help prolong them because you can again, those are stuff you can't see.
It's once again, and that's what I guess that's the kind of reason I actually said it's stuff that you can't see.
Hmm.
And it was like if I was to suggest anything to people out there, faith is a muscle, but you gotta build it up.
Yeah.
And you know that verse that talked about, you can have the mustard seed faith and move a mountain.
Hmm.
So if you got the mustard seed faith, can you build it up till it becomes a mustard tree?
Absolutely.
Where and see, it's possible. But how many days could you just ride that bike once every 2 weeks or the machine?
I could, however, I probably wouldn't reach and achieve the results that I'm looking for, you know.
So the benefit is to do it more than one time.
Exactly.
And that's the goal that we're trying to emanate to my family out there. Faith is not a one day thing. We talked about hope. Hope is that baby steps, and it
Hmm.
builds up to faith. And then faith takes these small mustard seed steps, becomes a mustard plant, becomes a full tree, starts to bear fruit. Birds can live there, other animals can get there. It's like, and then the tree gives off oxygen on top of that.
Exactly.
And it
Exactly.
takes in carbon dioxide.
Exactly.
So that tree becomes so beneficial to us. And it's like, I'm like, but do we build it up? Or when we get knocked down, we lose it.
I think it's so much easier. People tend to lose it. I don't want to say it's easier. Why the question is why do people lose it? And I think that's something we need to look into. Like whenever uh things are going bad, we tend to focus on the bad. We don't actually take time to think about times before, And you got to have that reserve bank. I like to call it reserve bank. When you feel down and out, you think about in the past all the times with when you had bad times when you were saved. And so that's that reserve bank. You have to go back and look at that and build off the top of that. That actually can help you develop a belief in your faith, which feels there's a level of comfort that you feel, and you're actually able to, I guess I'm looking for the word, I can't find it, but you're actually able to feel more comfortable and trusting in the faith that
Mhm.
you have, you
And,
know.
and, and faith is a trust thing, and faith is a two-way street, even though you can only see one way. Martin said it best. He said, faith is taking the first step when you don't even see the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, you know it takes you to another place, but I can't see the top of it. And if I don't see the top of it, I'm not going there.
Right.
Now, you can stay horizontal for your whole life, or you can go, so you know what, I'll take this step. Now,
Take
will
this.
it be easy? It's probably not, but nothing in life that we've ever done has been easy, or it's been easy, it goes away quickly.
Exactly.
That's why the drug dealer has to re-up every so many hours. That's why the pusher or the user has to go get some more of this substance, whatever it is. It could be pills, it could be alcohol. You can abuse anything. You can abuse shopping.
Yeah.
You can abuse how much this week I'll share with my family when I started reading, probably about June, I read 3 books fast, absorbed the information, and then I started on the 4th book, and I got to probably 1/10 of the book, and
Hmm.
my spirit said, "Stop reading."
Hmm.
Like, oh, whoa, we gonna do this again? He was like, yeah. And I know what that means. It means I want you to apply those first 3 before you
Hmm.
try to add anything else more.
Mm.
But you
Mm.
have to be internally wired. And a lot of us, our spirit will tell us, yo, that's not a faith step. But we'll
Yeah.
go ahead and take that fleshly step anyway. We'll go ahead and put this substance in or do this act or whatever it is for that short-term feel.
Uh-huh.
And when I started thinking about it, I was like, wow. I said, fear opposes faith and it's quiet, but fear is powerless unless you believe.
And focus on it.
Goes back to last week, focus. If you
Yeah.
follow that one course until that's not success, I promise you, you won't find it. A lot of us say, well, the economy is not good right now. I'll use that as a topic. And I was like, the economy is what you make it. I mean, can you adjust your spending habits, or do you have to maintain going out to eat every Friday night? Or do you
Right.
have to have the most expensive brands? Or do you
Hmm.
have to have these certain items that you become accustomed to? Or can
Hmm.
you have the faith that said, I don't need them now?
Right. Right.
I don't know. What is it about material things that make us feel confident? That's the question I'll ask you.
Hmm. I would say a lot of times, especially when it comes to superficial things, it's status. It's how people want to be perceived, and it's based off how they perceive things. If I see someone that has a Bentley, I perceive that person to be a person of status. Now, and if that's how I want to be perceived by others, I'm going to want that Bentley as well. Now, the funny thing to me is, with it all being superficial, you drive a Bentley, I drive a Bentley, and we both go sit into a restaurant and we're eating. How am I going to know that you own a Bentley? How am I even going to know that the Bentley's out in the parking lot? And if it is, that is yours, And even if I see it driving by, I don't see, oh, that's him in that Bentley. I just see a Bentley. Oh, that's a nice car. So again, you still are not getting the validation that you want, because no one knows you're in that car. No one knows it's yours.
See, here it goes back to your point about the bike or the cardio. You get
Mhm.
the benefit physically by doing this task that no one may see.
Right.
And that physical thing then prolongs or enhances what you already have.
Hmm.
Keyword enhances. It's like faith enhances your what you lack.
Yes.
Faith enhances what you don't believe in. That doesn't
Hmm.
say, family, you might not believe. and forget it. But it has to become a practice. I believe with you doing your cardio, you had to get into a physical rhythm. And I would tell my students, you must do something 21 days consecutively in
Hmm.
order to build up a habit that becomes a lifestyle.
Exactly.
And it's like, I don't know. And if you go to day 17, you're like, man, ain't nobody seeing this. I ain't doing this no more. Bam, you lost.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people do that because it's like, well, ain't nobody seeing me. And I think it's the validation thing that you mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
And it's like, why do we have to be validated? Why is it as a human being or people in society we have to be validated? What is that so why is it so powerful?
Because we don't have faith in ourselves. We rely on other people's um perception of us as opposed to us being reliant upon ourselves, relying upon ourselves for validation. And it's a hard thing. I think we all go through it. I'm sure we all go through it, until you get to that point where you just when there is no one else left to validate you and you're dependent upon everyone else to validate you, you have to decide, look at like, okay, I'm depending on everyone else. What am I going to do for myself? You know, you are your own responsibility. This is your responsibility to validate yourself, you know?
True. When I was living in the hotel, what I didn't tell people around me who were living there as well, because they had been there like maybe a year or some change. And when I moved in, I immediately had a job. So I was going to work every day. So I would get out, go to my little vehicle, go to work. And every day I would go to work at a certain time. And I'd come back and they'd see me walking back in with my little work gear on, so to speak. And I was like, man, you get to go to work every day, bro. And I was like, I didn't know how to respond to them. Then I lost my vehicle in the middle of
Hmm.
that time, 2 months in.
Hmm.
So guess what? I walked to work every day. And he was like, man, you don't never. I was like, the one thing that I know, the foundation is if I work, there will be another way made for me.
Hmm.
Stop working because of my situation, my environment, then it doesn't help me grow. But if I
Right.
push through like a seed never reaches the top of the soil until those roots push down.
Yeah.
But it's reaching towards the sun. And I was like, we are all like seeds. What are you
Hmm.
reaching towards?
Right.
And it's like, if we're reaching towards the Bentley or the clothes or status or validation, those are things that can be taken away.
Away at any given time.
And that's where I think we lose ourselves. And when I was out there, it was this premise. And I remember the people, and this is how I'll share this with you as we wrap up. Some people that I saw who had the most faith were homeless people.
Mm. Yeah.
And let me tell you why. And it was so odd. They would panhandle. I'm talking about literally like get up in the morning, go to that exit, they
Right.
rock that little panhandle thing. And I'm like, yo, it takes a lot of inner strength to go stand there and beg someone for money coming up the interstate, not knowing if one car might stop out of 10 or
Yeah.
two.
Right.
Like I'm watching him and I'm sitting there, wow, they had enough faith to say, if I go do this, something, my need will be met, whether
Mm.
they were going to buy drugs or something illegal. That's not my business, but it's like
Right.
their determination
Mm.
for
Wow.
that day,
Hmm.
more than a lot of, forgive me for saying this, family, a lot of these Christian folks who run the church often and pay their tithes and they're not homeless and they got the amenities and they can go this, but where's your faith?
Mm.
See,
Yeah.
and I know that's why I say faith is in the impossible. And when I came up with, I love the acronyms. Y'all gonna see this, family. I said, what is the acronym for faith? And it says forever and intentional trusting Him.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
talked about intention, and do you have any moments where faith kind of jumped in and kind of helped you propel forward in your movements in life?
Absolutely. Definitely, even in relationships, spoke about that on a previous podcast, just having faith that that the next day will be a better day, and even though you can't see what's ahead, but being intentional, knowing that I know that this is for the good. And I know that, there will be light at the end of the tunnel, so, but I guess it's like, making that sacrifice, and it wasn't always easy, but living in that moment, sitting in that those emotions, you know, actually was a place where I was able to reconnect with my faith because I lost faith. I'm not gonna say I lost faith. I was distracted from it. I just became disconnected from it because everything was there that I needed. And so when it was gone, it was like, wow, I was able to sit in there and then reconnect with my faith and rebuild from there and begin to grow again.
And
Mhm.
but see, there's a point where a lot of our family members out there who watching this, what he just said is if you lost that light of faith, it's right there for you. It never leaves you. You just have to be willing to sit down and stop and
Mhm.
adjust your perception.
Right.
What are you looking at? Are you looking at the
Mhm.
outside? Or are you looking at what's internal that you can do, what you have
Mhm.
control of? And as I was getting ready, I saw this little quote, and it said, God allowed Peter to sink in the water, but he didn't let him drown.
Mm.
God allowed Daniel to be cast into the lion's den, but he didn't let him be eaten. God allows challenges and obstacles in your life, but he will always deliver you. Key word, trust in him with more faith and let go of your doubts. And that's the message I want to share with our family because as we go forward, things are going to get crazy. Let me just preface that things are going to get crazy, but it's been told. But if you have faith, it will not deter you, it will not distract you. Fear cannot quietly come in and say, oh my gosh, are you ready? If he's coming back, will you be ready? See, that's that lack of faith, and then you're going to stop doing what you're doing, trusting in him. So,
Mhm.
it's just really a place where it's taken goes back to last week. What is your focus on? The
Yeah.
seen or the unseen?
Mhm.
And if you focus on the seen, it can be taken away. And when
Mhm.
it's taken away, how do you go on?
Yeah. And if like you said, what are you focusing on? And sometimes, it's easy to lose focus. And when you lose focus, it's because you've absorbed something else, you know? So now to get refocused, what are you gonna give up? What are you gonna sacrifice to become refocused, to align yourself with focus again? Most times it's a distraction. I've heard this quote one time before, and it was really profound to me. It says, uh, if you don't sacrifice for what it is you want, what you want becomes your sacrifice.
Ooh,
Yeah.
perfect way to kind of bring it to a culmination. And there's this quote that I live with and I shared a few times, and people when they hear it, it's like, oh man, I might be able to do that. Keep when they say I might, it's like they're not ready to take that step.
Oh.
But the first part of it says, do less, accomplish more, do nothing, achieve everything.
Mm, mm,
See, I like it because it gives you a progression. Just start with doing less.
yeah.
Less social media time, less
Mhm.
going out to the restaurant time, more time in with yourself, with your family. What do more of those things, and then you'll notice little small things begin to build up
Right.
until you get to a point where you have to do nothing and achieve everything. And
Mm,
family, I'll share one thing. As I went out on my nomadic journey, there was one thing I learned: travel light,
hmm. Yeah.
travel light. And if you I'm going to leave it out there because I want them to have something to ponder on. I
Mhm.
learned to travel light, so light that I had nothing, and every need was met every single time. Just like the $20 on the gas station,
Mhm.
I didn't know. I was just doing what I was supposed to do, and all of a sudden, there's a $20 bill just lying on the ground.
Mhm. At that
Your
particular
needs will,
time.
yeah, your
Mhm.
needs will always be met, and that's how I like to say, man. Thank you, bro, for sharing with me, man. It's just been a good time talking about faith. And as we wrap it up, man, we want to say, people, keep faith.
Go.